Peter Dinklage is certainly getting around. Not only does he play Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones, which is entering into its final and most anticipated season yet, but he also seems to have a role in all of the biggest movies. In just the last few years, he's appeared in X-Men, Days of Future Past, Pixels, the Angry Birds movie, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and Avengers: Infinity War, all of which were smash hits. He even starred in the most talked about Super Bowl commercial of 2018. What's he doing with all his movie, TV, and commercial money? Stay tuned until the end to get an answer to this question, and to learn just how much Peter cares about the husky pet trade. Before we begin, like this video to let us know that you're just as excited for Season 8 as we are. Now, here is how Peter Tyrion Lannister Dinklage spends his millions. It's imperative that we let you know what Dinklage earns before we tell you about how he spends it. Before he made it big on Game of Thrones, Dinklage was a respected character actor, but one that was far from what would be considered rich by Hollywood standards. Few of his movies were hits, and although he was critically acclaimed for performances in independent movies, the only roles people would have known him for were the angry executive in Elf and Trumpkin in Chronicles of Narnia: Prince Caspian. As for TV, Dinklage made one-off appearances on shows like Oz, Entourage, and 30 Rock, as well as a several-episode run on Threshold and Nip Tuck, but nothing that would have given him syndication money. So, although we'd be lying if we said Dinklage wasn't then making a good living from acting, it wasn't until 2011 that he could be considered one of the industry elites. Game of Thrones premiered that year, which changed the actor's life. He became a household name, or at the very least, a household face, and one of the most celebrated actors in the world. He was also inundated with money, but how much money? We know that's the question you've been waiting to hear answered. While we don't know how much Dinklage made for the first few seasons of Game of Thrones, for Season 4, it was reported by Vanity Fair that he and the other main actors, Emilia Clarke, Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, Kit Harington, and Lena Headey, earned $160,000 per episode. According to Deadline, their salaries increased to $300,000 for Season 5, and by Season 7, their per-episode earnings totaled $500,000. Although it was originally reported that the actors would be paid the same salary for the 8th and final season, they apparently renegotiated for $1 million an episode, and evidently, they received it. If the reports are true, Dinklage will be earning $7 million for Season 8. This puts his net worth in the tens of millions of dollars range, and it's growing. We have to acknowledge the elephant in the room. Peter Dinklage is not a public person. Well, technically he is, since he's an actor who's obligated to attend events and be interviewed on talk shows, but he's reluctant to let his public and personal lives overlap. This means he doesn't divulge many details about his background, relationships, or possessions. He lets his acting work speak for him. And it speaks loud. But for those fans more interested in the minutiae of Peter's life, it has been up to other people, mainly reporters, to provide the details. This is a hard job, especially as it concerns housing. Most celebrities' houses are in the public domain. You can find almost as much information about the houses as the celebrities, but not Peter's. However, in a video about his spending habits, housing is the perfect starting point. So we had to rely on some very sparse info to form a picture of Dinklage's housing situation. His only home with an accompanying photo is an apartment complex in New York City, a city where he's lived for over 20 years. This is one of the 3 houses that Dinklage is known to own. Another is located in his hometown of Moorestown, New Jersey, which he bought in 2010 and is apparently worth $4.7 million. However, over the last several years, Dinklage spent much of his time and money living in Ireland, where Game of Thrones was filmed. But Ireland is not the only foreign locale where Dinklage has spent time. He likes to vacation, as most people do, and his job makes it very easy to do so. Of course, being a millionaire doesn't hurt either. This is why we'd be remiss if we forgot to include vacationing when mentioning Dinklage's top expenses. Along with Ireland, he's been seen in such countries as the UK, Spain, Canada, and Italy. While the reasons for appearing in these countries may have been film-related, like shooting Game of Thrones for instance, we have to believe that Dinklage did do some standard vacation activities, like relaxing on the beach or indulging in the amazing food scene. In places like Spain and Italy, how could he not? We do know of one trip Dinklage took that wasn't work-related. It was to Scotland in June 2018, for the wedding of his Game of Thrones co-star Kit Harington to his former Game of Thrones co-star Rose Leslie. You may have noticed that we have not listed any tropical locations. As far as the public knows, Dinklage hasn't taken a trip to Aruba, Jamaica, or any other Caribbean island paradise. But this doesn't mean he hasn't done so in secret. Something that Dinklage is less secretive about is his love of music. He enjoys spending a night out watching live music. Not so much at concerts, it seems, but at clubs. His favorite spot in Los Angeles was the Lava Lounge, which has since closed. But he's also been seen at Vicar Street, Dublin, Ireland's 1,000-seat venue, watching the indie rock band, The National. His love of music can be traced back to a few key moments of his childhood. One was that Peter's family happened to live beside Bruce Springsteen's manager in New Jersey. The neighbors struck up a friendship, which led to the manager and Bruce himself hanging out at Dinklage's house. Bruce would even play music for Peter and his family. Peter would expand his musical love to cover the whole neighborhood, as he put on musical puppet shows for the locals, one of which was a performance of The Who's album, Quadrophenia. But it didn't stop at the puppet shows. In his 20s, Dinklage was the frontman of a New York punk rock band called Wizzy. It was while rocking with Wizzy that Peter got a scar running from his neck to his eyebrow. He was playing at the club CBGB in Manhattan, jumping around on stage as all punk rockers are supposed to do, when an errant knee smashed his temple. Although he was wounded, he continued the show like nothing happened. Although we can't imagine how gruesome he looked the next morning. Thus, Dinklage has paid for his music fandom in more ways than one.
Yes, 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 yes.
For a moment, let's transition from things Peter Dinklage has bought to something Peter Dinklage hasn't bought. He's never bought a husky. Why is this important, you ask? Well, in 2017, Dinklage teamed up with PETA to implore his fans to stop buying huskies. Animal shelters had reported an influx of huskies entering their buildings, a phenomenon that was directly linked to Game of Thrones' popularity. As all of you fans know, dire wolves are the large, quasi-supernatural dogs that live in Westeros and are the spiritual and physical protectors of the Stark clan, and they look an awful lot like huskies. Have you made the connection yet? Game of Thrones fans flock to the pet stores and breeders to buy up all their huskies. The problem with this is twofold. One is that this practice unfairly discriminates against other breeds, meaning that many equally deserving dogs get passed over because they don't look like dire wolves. The second is that many of these huskies end up abandoned. Since most people buying a dog because of a TV show are doing so impulsively, they aren't aware of how hard it is to raise and train a husky. So, after the hopeful owners realize that they can't hack it, off to the shelters the huskies go. It got so bad that breed-specific shelters in California and the UK reported twice as many huskies entering their shelters after Game of Thrones premiered and rose in popularity. This compelled PETA to contact Dinklage, who told his fans the aforementioned facts and capped the press release by saying, "Please, if you're going to bring a dog into your family, make sure that you're prepared for such a tremendous responsibility, and remember to always adopt from a shelter." This isn't the first time that a movie or TV show caused a dangerous demand for a certain breed. Dalmatians were targeted after the release of 101 Dalmatians. Pugs were in demand after the breed featured prominently in Men in Black, and Chihuahuas were objectified after the premiere of Beverly Hills Chihuahua. So maybe Peter's work with the charity was a good use of his time and his money. Although it might not be a direct way of spending his millions, we're glad to see that he's investing his time into a worthwhile cause. And it's probably safe to assume that he spent at least some of his dollars helping out with PETA's campaign. Thankfully, Dinklage doesn't make such impulsive purchases on huskies. The only animal that he spends his money on is Kevin. Kevin is Peter's rescue dog. He was adopted from a shelter many years ago, and Kevin looks every minute of it. We're not trying to disparage the old hound dog, but he's definitely gray around the muzzle. This just adds to his character, and we're sure that Dinklage thought the same thing when he fell for the distinguished mutt. Kevin's claim to fame is that he was mentioned in Peter's 2011 Emmy speech, when he won the award for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series. More specifically, he thanked the dog sitter who was taking care of Kevin that night. Peter's adoption of Kevin means that he walks the walk regarding animal rights, and is not just posturing to enhance his image. He supports, and presumably donates to, multiple environmental charities. including PETA. Not only did he help the organization in its battle against impulsive dog owners, he also released a video for PETA in 2014, urging meat eaters to consider the ethical and financial ramifications of their food choices. Dinklage was a vegetarian for most of his adult life and switched to veganism a few years ago. When a scene required Tyrion Lannister to eat meat during Game of Thrones, Dinklage ate tofu instead. The actor is committed to fighting for animal rights, and he's also spoken in the past of charities called Farm Sanctuary and Cruelty Free International. The main takeaway of this video should be that most of Peter's money goes to his family, Kevin included. Along with his rescue dog, Dinklage has a wife, Erica Schmidt, and 2 children. The first was born in 2011 and the second in 2017. He met Erica, a theater director, in 2002, and they eloped in 2005. 6 years later, they had a daughter. Although many photos exist of Peter, Erica, and their daughter out in public, nothing else is known about her. And by nothing, we mean nothing, not even her name. After being asked by a reporter what his daughter's name is, Dinklage replied, Zelig. In a later interview, Dinklage said that he was joking when he called her Zelig, but he still didn't reveal her real name. If you think this is excessive, it's nothing compared to the shroud of secrecy surrounding his new child. Not only is their name a mystery, but so is their gender. It can be assumed that based on the privacy Dinklage maintains with his family, that they are the principal beneficiaries of Peter's wealth, and it's probably not even close. Forget mansions and fancy cars. The supreme value that Dinklage provides his family with is being able to live peacefully and quietly, despite being one of the biggest stars in the world.
My wife Erica Schmidt, and my lovely new daughter.
That's all for how Peter Tyrion Lannister Dinklage spends his millions. What would you buy if you had Peter Dinklage's money? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.